He only needed a demon's tongue to slice a passerby in half with a single stroke and then eject it, achieving a salted fish thrust. The man thought he was invincible, but unexpectedly, he met his match today. The opponent's strike nearly took his life. Years ago, humans developed a monster named Player. People locked them underground to fight for entertainment. Every night, celebrities and gentlemen and ladies gathered to place high stakes on the outcomes between players. Players were merely monsters slaughtering on instinct, and as color designer Nakao's child, they should not possess human-like will. However, on that night, a player developed its own thoughts and killed all the spectators, escaping. During the chaos, a doctor took away a newly born player. Time flew, and 10 years have passed. The lizard man before us was one of those escaped monsters, able to sever a passerby in half in an instant. This was already the 5th related victim in the city. The police couldn't find the culprit. The lizard man found pleasure in his killings. Meanwhile, the doctor lived in hiding in the slums with a child, naming the newly born player Jin, and taught Jin to avoid violence. With the doctor's efforts, Jin took pleasure in saving others. One day, Jin came across an older sister being harassed by thugs. The man kept saying filthy words to the woman. Seeing this, Jin didn't hesitate and immediately fought with the 3 thugs, knocking them down in one round. The thug's subordinates also tried to intervene but failed, all falling to the ground. At that moment, Jin's 2 friends also found the place. The boy was named Kouga, and the girl Konoha. The 3 formed a small group, doing righteous deeds together. In the evening, the older sister gave Jin 10,000 yuan as a reward, and also handed him her business card. But what Jin didn't know was that the lizard man had already set his sights on the slum. When Jin returned to the slum, he found his grandfather lying in a pool of blood, and the culprit was the lizard man. In his last moments, the grandfather wanted to give Jin one last lesson, that violence inevitably leads to casualties, so he hoped Jin would restrain himself in life. Jin hurriedly took his grandfather to the town clinic, but was harshly turned away due to lack of money. Jin could only push his grandfather's body through the rain, wandering. In the park, Jin decided to seek help from his friend Kouga, so he immediately dialed Kouga's mobile number. But at that moment, Kouga's father was scolding him for disgracing the family, for mixing with a street kid, and he broke Kouga's phone on the spot. With nowhere to go, Jin finally saw the business card the older sister gave him, so he came to seek her help. The sister, seeing the destitute Jin, did not disdain him, immediately helping him complete the hospital and police procedures, and took him home to clean up. Knowing Jin had no parents and lived only with his grandfather, the sister felt even more pity for Jin. After changing Jin into new clothes, the sister took Jin out to distract him. However, they did not anticipate that the lizard man had followed them there and immediately pierced the sister's body with his tongue. The injured sister could only tell Jin to run away quickly. But how could Jin run away? The figure before him was his enemy. But in the next second, Jin himself was pierced through by the lizard man's tongue and violently thrown to the edge of the park. The sister tried to approach and check on him, but she too was struck across the face by the lizard man's tongue, disfiguring her. "I now want to enjoy freedom," the lizard man declared, perhaps driven by an instinctive awakening. The next moment, Jin grabbed the lizard man's tongue and with a reverse swing, flung him away, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. The enraged Jin unleashed energy powerful enough to shatter street lamps. The lizard man was stunned in an instant, and then Jin transformed and delivered a punch. With just one strike, the lizard man was killed on the spot. When Jin awoke again, he found himself in a hospital. The police, learning of Jin's repeated attacks, couldn't help but sympathize and encourage him, but at least one life was preserved. He was a masochist, loving to be beaten severely by enemies. Even if an enemy's punch pierced his chest, he reveled in it, because only through such experiences could he awaken the Zet factor within his body. Once awakened, his aura was formidable. Back to the present, since the lizard man incident, Jin and the sister had come to depend on each other, living together. Because of the sister's disfigured face in a world where appearance is paramount, she couldn't even find a job, and eventually had to run a convenience store in the corner of the lower city. At 16, Jin always thought about working to relieve some of the sister's pressure, but she would scold him, insisting that he should be studying at this age. During this period, his friends Kouga and Konoha, due to their father's lectures, had cut off contact with Jin. However, Konoha still often came to the slums to help the homeless, and by chance, she met Jin again. Seeing Konoha still doing good deeds, Jin couldn't help but feel a bit happy. Praised by Jin, Konoha beamed with joy. Meanwhile, as the creator of the players, President Amagi was frantically searching for traces of Zet, because only by finding Zet could he hunt down all the rampaging players. Jin was unaware of his true identity, but he always felt different from other kids, like being able to smell a unique stench, which was the scent emitted by players. Following the smell, he arrived at a high platform of a building engulfed in flames. The next second, a burly man burst out from the burning floor, and this man was clearly no good character, immediately spewing a burst of flames at Jin. Clearly, this man was the arsonist causing the fire. At the same time, Kouga and Konoha arrived to uphold their sense of justice. Kouga immediately rushed into the fire, but unexpectedly found Jin, who had been beaten into the rubble. Kouga showed Jin his newly developed fire extinguishing spray, which, despite its unimpressive look, was indeed effective. Just then, they heard the cries of children, seeing an adult crushed under a bookshelf, while 3 young children cowered nearby. Seeing this, Kouga signaled Jin to give up on their mother, to which Jin firmly disagreed. Jin immediately lifted the mother and 3 children onto a bed, and as the floor collapsed, he pushed the bed carrying the 4 of them to the lower floor. Kouga thought it was too dangerous and that they would all die, but Jin replied that going together wouldn't be lonely, as dying together was better than dying alone. Kouga, angered, accused the person, and Jin felt contempt for Kuga's willingness to abandon their mother. In the next moment, Jin also jumped down to the lower level, leaving Kouga alone amidst the chaotic fire. As the fire grew larger, Kouga had no choice but to rush out of the window in a wolf-like manner. However, upon reaching the ground floor, he discovered that the mother and her 3 daughters were all safe and sound, having survived with the help of firefighters. Broadcasted by the reporters, Kouga inadvertently became a firefighting hero in the eyes of the public. Meanwhile, Jin's battle had just begun. The fire-breathing monster approached Jin again, prepared for a fight to the death. For the fire-breathing monster, as long as there was fire, it could continually regenerate its body, making it invincible in the flames. It then grabbed Jin and delivered several punches, leaving Jin powerless to retaliate. Despite this, Jin still taunted the fire-breathing monster mockingly. Enraged by the taunt, the monster threw a punch that pierced through Jin's chest. Unexpectedly, at that moment, an anomaly occurred. Jin's skin began to assimilate the fire-breathing monster's arm. Amidst the rampage of the angel's halo, Jin suddenly awakened the Zet factor within him. His hair turned white, and his muscles swelled, allowing him to pulverize the arm of the fire-breathing monster with a single punch. Expressionless, he then removed the severed limb from his chest, and the wound healed instantly. The fire-breathing monster hastily gathered flames to repair its body and furiously spewed hot flames at Jin. However, Jin counteracted by pulling out Kouga's fire-extinguishing device. After crushing it, the released dry ice completely evaporated the monster. The fire-breathing monster tried to resist, but the next second, Jin severed its heart with a hand chop. As the monster died, Jin shed his Zet appearance. Just then, the building began to collapse. When Konoha came forward to inspect, only found Jin, battered and unconscious. The rescue team immediately transported Jin to the hospital. This rescue operation also led Amagi, the president, to finally find the Zet man he had been searching for many years. When Jin awoke again, he was horrified to find his beloved sister being bitten and trampled upon by another player. Angered and disgusted by this desecration of his relative, Jin's anger took over his mind. The angel's halo erupted, and in his transformed state, Jin blasted the player in front of him. His black and white form reappeared in view, while President Amagi observed Jin from behind a glass, noting that Jin was not yet in his final form. The player continued to charge at Jin, smashing him into the floor with a deliberate punch, thinking he had killed Jin. However, as the smoke cleared, Jin simply felt it was like being tickled. Unable to bear the humiliation, the player attacked again, but this time Jin retaliated with an uppercut that finished off the player. At this moment, Jin also noticed 2 people hiding behind a window. His anger led him to break the window with a punch. Jin didn't understand why these people had brought his sister here. As a Zet, Jin instinctively hunted players, but he couldn't comprehend why his sister now emitted the scent of a player. As the bodyguard shot his sister dead, the presence of any player ceased to exist. Jin then reverted to his human form. As for the sister who was killed, she was merely a fake, created by old President Amagi using technology, hence her emitting the scent of a player. The real sister was still in a corner store. When Jin awoke, he found himself confined by President Amagi. To prevent any disturbances, a bodyguard injected Jin with a sedative. President Amagi then took Jin to an ancient ruin, and this is precisely where those monster players were born, and also where Jin originated. At the top of the wall, there is a terrifying halo called the Rampage Wheel by the President. It serves the same function as the ring on Jin's hand. Normally, the monsters hide in society in human form. They revert to their original forms through a phenomenon known as Satomadori. The Rampage Wheel has the power to forcibly revert the monsters to their true forms. The President and Jin's grandfather Goro jointly created the players. To prevent the players from losing control and causing harm to humanity, they then created the Zetman as a hunter. This is the origin of Jin. However, Goro did not want to treat Jin merely as a tool. He wanted to raise Jin as a human being. Thus, he parted ways with the President and disappeared from sight. But fate is inescapable. Jin was destined to fulfill his duty as a Zet. The President then took Jin to his sister's corner store. Jin wanted to go down to check if his sister was safe and sound, but the President stopped him. The President stated that from now on, Jin could not have close relationships with anyone. Since Jin is a Zet, there is a high possibility that players could harm people close to him. If he truly valued his sister, he could no longer contact her. Although it's cruel, that is the reality. Now Jin is both human and Zet. It's up to him to decide which path to follow, whether to become a human as his grandfather hoped, or to fight as a Zet at the President's request. For the current Jin, his only desire is to protect the people he loves. Therefore, he ultimately decides to fully become a Zet, but with conditions. He wants the President to heal his sister's disfigured face and also find her lost child. The President agrees to all the conditions. Meanwhile, a man in a suit also arrives at the dilapidated ruins. As he looks at the Rampage Wheel, he seems to be plotting something. Foam oozes from the palm of his hand, and in the next second, he instantly melts his prey. He is a crab monster. Every day, his mind is filled with nothing but pleasure. His favorite activity is to spit foam and dissolve his prey, listening to their desperate screams of despair. But today, he has encountered a man he should not have provoked. His attacks seem to have no effect on the man. The story begins with the police discovering a corpse with a strange death appearance. The scene contained only a hand corroded into sand. 2 years have passed since Jin agreed to become a Zet at the President's request. During these 2 years, Jin has been training as the President directed, continuously evolving towards the final form of Zetman. Meanwhile, a group of 3 monsters is playing with humans in an alley. The leader simply spits out foam, and a man's head is instantly corroded away. A girl passing by happens to witness this scene, which scares her terribly. Seeing the girl running away, the monsters become even more excited. Eventually, the girl runs to the room specially prepared by the President for Jin. The surroundings are filled with cameras to monitor Jin's daily activities. When Jin returns home, he immediately finds the girl hiding in a corner. Jin directly picks up the girl. Seeing that Jin is not a monster, the girl quickly tells Jin about what she just encountered. Jin immediately realizes that the guy the girl saw is a player. Considering the girl's safety, Jin ultimately decides to let the girl stay temporarily and makes her a pot of fried rice as hospitality. But just at that moment, Jin suddenly smelled a foul odor. It was the scent of the player, so he immediately left home. The girl was afraid to be at home alone, so she hurriedly ran out as well, but she couldn't keep up with Jin's pace. In the middle of the road, she found her lost bag, unaware that it was merely a trap set by the monsters to lure her out and deal with her thoroughly. Seeing the girl resisting, the monsters became even more excited. At the critical moment, Jin, following the scent, arrived at the scene. Jin demanded 10,000 from the woman, saying he would only save her if she paid. Upon hearing that saving someone required payment, a bystander mocked him, but the next second he could no longer speak. Jin struck him with lightning speed. Before anyone could react, Jin was already grappling with the gang leader, sending him flying with a flying kick. Of course, the leader was no pushover. He got up and returned a kick to Jin, who spat blood from the blow. To prevent the girl from seeing too much, the leader immediately had someone knock her out with a tranquilizer gun. At this moment, the battle between Jin and the monsters was just heating up. The leader revealed his true form, but this would attract Sujinin, so the two underlings fled the scene immediately. Jin quickly bit into an awakening accelerator invented by the leader, which rapidly enhanced the Zet factor in his body. The battle resumed, but the transformed monster was now stronger, overwhelming Jin and sending him flying with a punch, then locking him in a hold. Jin responded with a punch, instantly decapitating the monster. However, the next second, the monster's body erupted in a mass of foam, and Jin's body was quickly corroded. After receiving a fatal wound, Jin's Zet factor was fully activated. He retaliated with a heavy punch to the monster. Then, a pure white figure appeared, a form different from before, which caught the leader's attention as a sign of Jin's progress. Jin then tore player in half with his bare hands. However, what Jin didn't know at that moment was that the essence of this monster was in the head he had just knocked off, which was now observing Jin's every move from a hidden spot. But the next second, the monster realized something was off. Sujinin had found it. Sujinin indicated that the monster had broken the rules and immediately executed it. With the monster's death, Jin finally reverted to his human form. Unexpectedly, the next second, Sujinin appeared behind him and made a lethal strike. He slashed open the major artery in the girl's neck to satisfy his perverse needs, revealing his true monstrous roach-like form. Frightened by this, the girl lost control of her bladder and bowels on the spot. After Jin tore a crab-like monster apart, Sujinin, who had arrived at the scene, showed great interest in Jin, who was neither player nor human. The next second, the mysterious man in a suit, Seiji, also arrived, indicating that if Sujinin killed Jin, the boss would be very unhappy. After saying this, Sujinin left the scene. Seiji signaled that he had no ill intentions. He had just been waiting for Jin to grow up. Wearing human skin and blending into society was a rule for players. If they didn't adhere to the rules and reverted to their true form, they would be eliminated by Sujinin. When the red-haired girl, Hanako, woke up from her unconscious state, Jin had already prepared lunch for her. From their conversation, Jin learned that the girl's name was Hanako. Hanako always experiences intermittent headaches, so she has to take her medication on time every day. After meals, Hanako uses Jin's bathroom to take a bath. Jin, knowing that all his actions are being monitored by the president's staff, quickly rushes into the bathroom and unplugs the camera. Seeing this, the woman blushes and warns Jin not to peek. Elsewhere, Kouga encounters a strange old man on his way home from school. The old man claims to be Kouga's fan and has come to verify if Kouga truly qualifies as a companion of justice. Therefore, he decides to test Kouga. The old man immediately pulls out his smartphone, showing a video where Kouga's sister Konoha is being mistreated. Kouga knows that Konoha can't swim, and his anxiety grows. The old man then states that a murder will soon occur, involving 3 of Kouga's fans. He suggests that if Kouga comes with him now, he can prevent their deaths. Thus, the old man presents Kouga with a choice: save his biological sister or save 3 unrelated strangers. The old man wants to see which side the self-proclaimed just Kouga will save. Ultimately, Kouga chooses to go to his sister's side. However, it turns out that his sister was merely practicing swimming with her teacher, albeit a bit recklessly. Meanwhile, the 3 unrelated girls are truly murdered on the streets. This was just a cruel game by the old man, and obviously, Kouga fails his test. The path to heroism is thorny, and the old man is preparing a second test for Kouga. Kouga feels tortured by the loss of these 3 lives, knowing the perpetrator, but unable to do anything about it. Meanwhile, Seiji, aware of a player's innate desire to kill, encourages his younger brothers to eliminate Jin. At this time, Jin is preparing to go out to buy groceries. Hanako, scared to be home alone, decides to go out with Jin. On the road, Jin runs into Konoha, who had come to return a necklace Jin had lost. Seeing Jin with another woman, Konoha feels deflated like a burst balloon. Jin warns Konoha not to come here anymore, fearing that she might be attacked by a player. However, Konoha does not understand Jin's intentions and can't help but cry inconsolably on the street. The next second, Konoha and her classmate are targeted by the player brothers. The third brother, a roach monster, kidnaps the two girls to an abandoned building and creates a giant roach clone to guard them. Terrified, Konoha seeks her brother's help and hurriedly dials Kouga's number. Sensing something amiss, Kouga quickly locates Konoha's position and immediately puts on a newly developed combat suit to head to the scene. The roach monster, who enjoys tormenting women, slashes Konoha's neck with his fingernail, taking pleasure in her fear and confusion. Simultaneously, Jin senses the player's presence. He quickly returns to the spot he had just passed, only to find Konoha's shoe left on the ground. He intends to rescue Konoha immediately, but unexpectedly, at that moment, the second brother, a lobster monster, comes looking for him. The lobster monster expressed that it had always wanted to test its strength against Jin, but Jin did not carry his awakening supplement at the moment. Therefore, he was unable to quickly enter the battle state and was instead unilaterally pummeled by the lobster monster. The monster forcefully pinned Jin down, tore his clothes, and then a steel nail was driven deeply into Jin's chest. The reason for this brutal act was solely to witness the birth of a king and see the final red form of Zetman. Just 2 hours ago, in order to rescue his friend Konoha, Jin had no choice but to battle the lobster monster. However, since he had left home without his awakening supplement, Jin was unable to transform and was ruthlessly beaten down by the lobster monster. Meanwhile, the president was monitoring Jin's fight from behind and noticed that there was no significant change in Jin's Zet factor. On the other side, the younger brother, the roach monster, was toying with Konoha. Seeing Konoha's terrified face, he felt extremely excited. As Jin continued to be brutally beaten by the lobster monster, hovering between life and death, his body's instinct to survive gradually activated the Zet factor inside him. With the power of the Zet factor, Jin suddenly grabbed an iron rod and pierced through the lobster monster's body, then hurriedly escaped to head towards where Konoha was being held. At this moment, rescuing the hostages was the most important thing. However, since Konoha had suffered an arterial neck wound, she was weak from excessive blood loss by the time Jin found her. Jin quickly picked up the feeble Konoha, but she complained about her body being dirty. Jin signaled that he didn't mind and just felt sorry for being late. But the next second, Jin was directly pierced through the chest by the roach monster hiding in the shadows. Jin, wounded, swung a punch at the roach monster, but it was easily blocked. If that was all Jin could muster, he would just be brutally beaten by the roach monster. Just as the roach monster was about to finish Jin off, several beams of light suddenly cleared the monsters at the scene, and Kouga, dressed in a combat suit, arrived. Kouga immediately found the severely injured Jin. Without time for pleasantries, Jin told Kouga to quickly take Konoha and her friend Tomomi to safety. After learning there were other monsters nearby, Kouga immediately chose to strike. At this moment, the lobster monster was splitting into clones, searching for Jin's whereabouts. Kouga hurried to the streets to stop the lobster monster's rampage. This was the first time Kouga had encountered such a monster, and he wasn't sure if he could defeat it. At that moment, the man in the suit, Seiji, appeared before Jin. Seiji kicked Jin, sending him flying, and said lightly, "You must think that being battered and wandering between life and death would awaken you as Zet, as it always has before. But that is not the case." Now Jin had surpassed the stage of awakening through physical harm and had entered the final stage. The next second, Seiji pinned Jin to the ground and then pulled out a steel nail that had been infused with fragments of the berserk wheel. Jin would resonate with the berserk wheel, and then Seiji drove the steel nail directly into Jin's chest. Jin immediately cried out in agonizing pain as his body began to gradually assimilate the steel nail. With the explosion of the angel wheel, Jin began to evolve, and Seiji sat quietly by, watching everything unfold. Then, a red light suddenly appeared before Seiji's eyes, as Jin's body gradually transformed into its red state. With the transformation complete, the buildings around were instantly shattered by Jin's aura. Seiji quietly stood atop a high-rise, witnessing the birth of the king. Behind him, President Amagi was also stunned, for he had never seen Jin like this before. It was Jin's first time reaching the red form, and with just one strike, he he instantly killed the roach monster in front of him. Jin, in his initial transformation into the red form, hadn't anticipated such power himself. He felt as though he could do anything, filled with immense strength. His body resonated with the fragments of the berserk wheel, prompting him to chase after the roach monster that Kouga had severely wounded. At that moment, the roach monster was still boasting, completely unaware of Jin's murderous intent. Under the influence of the berserk wheel, the roach monster was forcibly reverted to its original form, which enraged it. It wanted to kill Jin, but Jin countered with a kick that sent the monster flying. Just as Jin was about to finish off the roach monster, Seiji appeared again. Jin didn't want to hear any more of Seiji's nonsense. With a backhanded punch, he ripped out the heart of the roach monster and then killed it with another punch. Jin then confronted Seiji, demanding to know his true intentions. After speaking, Jin attempted to use the berserk wheel to reveal Seiji's true form. But unlike the roach monster, Seiji was a special player and remained unaffected. Jin didn't waste any more words and immediately attacked. But Seiji easily dodged all his moves within a round. He looked forward to their next encounter. Meanwhile, Kouga was still dealing with the lobster monster. Faced with Kouga's challenge, the lobster monster immediately revealed its true form. However, Kouga was undisturbed. He quickly switched his gun to a sword, ready to engage in close combat. But clearly, Kouga was no match for the lobster monster, who heavily slammed him onto the rooftop, leaving him immobilized. Just as the lobster monster was about to take Kouga's life, Jin suddenly appeared and kicked the lobster monster away. Looking at the ring in his hand, Kouga immediately realized that the red figure was Jin. The two then joined forces to fight the lobster monster. Seeing this, the lobster monster immediately split into several clones. This monster had the ability to transfer its main body among its clones, so they had to defeat them all together, or the fight would never end. Kouga initiated the attack, and Jin, not to be outdone, joined in. Although the red form significantly increased Jin's strength, he was clearly not yet accustomed to this power, and his body began to slow down. The lobster monster quickly seized this gap and fiercely stabbed Jin, causing the steel nail in Jin's chest to shatter directly. Jin then reverted back to his white form. Jin exerted all his strength to shake off the lobster clones. Facing the lobster monster's main body's sudden thrust, Jin could only barely defend. The next second, Kouga immediately came from behind, holding the lobster monster to create an opportunity for Jin. Seeing this, Jin quickly grabbed Kouga's long sword and swung it at the lobster monster. The coordinated attack from both sides immediately confused the lobster monster. The two continuously cooperated, eventually dealing with the last clone. Jin didn't want to hear any more of the lobster monster's mutterings. Through their cooperation, they finally resolved the crisis. With the player dealt with, Jin also reverted back to his human form. At that moment, Jin was completely exhausted. Kouga couldn't help but marvel at how time flies, and knowing the hardships Jin had faced alone, tears welled up in his eyes. Kouga promptly took Jin home, but to his surprise, found his room filled with sand. Jin immediately realized that a player had invaded his home. He quickly became concerned for Hanako's safety. Fortunately, Hanako had only fainted. President Amagi, Kouga's grandfather, had not expected Kouga to learn about the existence of players in such a manner. The grandfather then told Kouga everything, including the origins of Jin. Meanwhile, Jin also realized that he had fallen in love with Hanako. The two shared mutual feelings and thus confirmed their relationship. Jin asked Hanako to go home first because he still had other matters to attend to. Jin then went to the president's laboratory with Kouga. The president and Goru had once developed a completely different kind of earthling net, but an error occurred during the development process, turning N into Z, which led to the creation of Zet. Afterwards, the president decided to use Zet as a trump card against players. It was here that Jin learned that his grandfather was still alive, which left him utterly shocked. He thought his grandfather had long since stopped breathing and been declared dead. Why was he still alive? Jin immediately began questioning the president relentlessly. The president decided not to hide the truth anymore and allowed Jin to meet the current Goro. Seeing his grandfather in such a state only filled Jin with immense coldness and guilt. This was the moment when the protagonist truly matured. Faced with his grandfather, who was now just ahead, Jin chose to end his grandfather's life himself. When the president found Goru's body, only the head was still alive. The president had intended to use it as a mere database, but it unexpectedly gained consciousness. Faced with his grandfather's tragic state, Jin ultimately chose to end his life himself. His grandfather's last words to Jin were about whether he had eaten well. He also revealed to Jin the method to become complete, which involved the red stone necklace that Jin had always worn on his chest. Now, this necklace was in Konoha's hands. However, at that moment, Seiji also learned of this, and quickly stole the red stone necklace from Konoha. Since the red stone was lost, Jin had no choice but to go home first. He and Hanako finally became a couple and enjoyed a happy night together. However, this was just the calm before the storm. At dawn, Seiji took control of the entire TV station, showing people the existence and origins of players, and also calling for all players to riot. The entire city was instantly destroyed by players. The hunting instinct in Jin's body led him to the streets to hunt down the players. Although he successfully saved some humans, he was also regarded as a monster by humans. While Jin was out, Hanako was kidnapped by a player at home. Jin could not let Seiji commit atrocities unchecked, so he immediately went to Seiji's location. However, Seiji was not the least bit panicked because he knew that Jin, in his transformed state, was no match for him. Seiji thrust his fingers into Jin's body, severely wounding Jin to the brink of death. Seiji then pulled out a steel nail made from the red stone and was about to insert it into Jin's chest. However, just at that moment, Kouga arrived in time and successfully killed a player. However, Kouga's father, driven by his own interests, shockingly demanded that Kouga kill Jin. Aware of his father's evil, Kouga could not forgive his actions. He immediately aimed his gun at his father, knowing that allowing such a scoundrel to live would only endanger more lives. When Kouga refused to obey, his father instantly turned against him, commanding his subordinates to eliminate Kouga without any regard for their father-son relationship. Seeing this, Kouga hesitated no further and shot his father in the head on the spot, which also gravely injured his mother as she tried to intervene. Kouga then turned his focus towards Seiji. Upon noticing this, Seiji immediately ordered all players present to reveal their true forms, causing chaos across the entire set. With the atmosphere so charged, Seiji threw a steel nail in front of Jin, giving him the choice to become a complete Zet. Fearing that Seiji had corrupted the steel nail, Kouga disagreed with Jin inserting it, not wanting Jin to choose a path of evil. But without inserting the nail, he felt powerless. The next second, Seiji also brought Hanako to the scene, tied up. Seeing his beloved being used as a hostage, Jin no longer wanted to feel helpless and decided to insert the steel nail into his chest. He told Kouga that if he turned evil, Kouga must kill him. After inserting the nail, Jin endured immense pain as energy surged through him. Following a burst of white light, the complete Zet form appeared. Unexpectedly, the power Jin had finally obtained ended up indirectly causing the death of his beloved woman. After inserting the red stone steel nail, Jin completely awakened as a divinely endowed being. Under the influence of his rampage, all hidden players at the scene went berserk. However, it turned out that his beloved Hanako was also a player. Jin's rampage caused nearby players to react, forcing them to irreversibly turn back from being human. Hanako herself was shocked to discover she was a monster. Startled, she began to destroy everything around her, turning whatever she touched into sand. Jin tried to calm Hanako down, but Kouga, driven by his sense of justice, cleaved her in two without hesitation. Jin's beloved woman tragically died right before his eyes, and he could only howl in grief. Seeing Hanako's dead body, Jin was driven by rage. At that moment, Kouga launched an attack on Seiji, but it was clear that Kouga was no match for Seiji, who quickly inflicted severe injuries on him. At this point, Jin made his decision, picking up Kouga's blade and striking Seiji with it. Seeing that he had been stabbed by Jin, Seiji excitedly proclaimed that his dream of creating a divinely endowed being was about to come true, indifferent to his own death. Facing Seiji's sinister smirk, Jin finally delivered a crushing punch through his chest, sending him plummeting from a high building. Having dealt with Seiji, the next challenge was Kouga. By this time, Kouga had lost his mind in the name of justice, becoming irrational and ruthless. Once comrades fighting side by side, they were now pitted against each other in battle. However, Kouga was no match for Jin and was quickly defeated. Nevertheless, Kouga was still prepared to make a last stand by shooting Jin in the head, But Jin, using a teleportation move, swiftly subdued Kouga on the ground. The anger from losing his loved one triggered yet another transformation in Jin. At that moment, he suddenly sprouted black wings, resembling a fierce beast emerging from hell. He was ready to end Kouga with a single strike, but ultimately, Jin calmed down. The wings on his back shattered as well. He could not bring himself to strike his friend. From the beginning to the end, Jin followed the teachings of his grandfather Goro. Even though his body was in its complete form, his heart remained human. This imperfect state was exactly what Goro wanted to see. The innate instinct of a player is to kill. The association leader and Goro once sought to use this combative instinct to eliminate players. To curb this instinct, Goro imparted humanity to Jin. Time quickly moved to 3 years later. Many lives had withered away. The events of that night gradually faded from people's memories. However, among those players hidden in the deepest layers of human society, those driven by instinct to satisfy their desires continued unabated. Kouga, as before, pursued his justice, driving out players. Players feared Kouga, and they also feared another monster, lurking in the darkness, constantly hunting players. Unpraised and unnoticed, yet the man still fought, choosing darkness for the sake of light, and that man's name was Zetman.